Have you ever heard a creepy voice coming from a child's mouth? Like, inhumanly creepy? Yeah, me neither. But that's precisely what happens in the 1973 horror classic, The Exorcist. Stick around for a chilling recap of this cinematic nightmare as we explore the demonic possession of a young girl and the desperate fight to save her soul. In the heart of Iraq, a seasoned Catholic priest named Father Merrin embarks on an archaeological expedition. His discovery of a diminutive, ancient statuette leaves him utterly astonished. The artifact's presence causes him to feel increasingly alienated from reality. As he wanders the city, he encounters a series of eerie occurrences. An old clock ceases its ticking while he stands nearby, and he narrowly escapes being struck by a horse-drawn carriage. Compelled by a growing unease, Father Merrin returns to the dig site, where he confronts a statue of a demon that eerily resembles the sculpture he found. Meanwhile, in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., actress Chris McNeil is engrossed in her script when an odd sound disrupts her concentration. She investigates the noise of shattering glass and growls echoing through her home. Upon checking on her daughter Reagan, she finds the young girl's window ajar, allowing the chill to seep in. Chris secures the window and covers Reagan with a blanket. The following morning, Chris instructs her servants, Willie and Carl, to set up rat traps in the attic. Later, on the bustling set of Chris's film Crash Course, she vents her frustrations about the script to director Burke Dennings, who reassures her. In this movie, Chris plays an educator incensed by the impending demolition of their school. After wrapping up for the day, Chris strolls home, taking in her neighborhood's vibrant sounds and sights. She passes by a church where two priests discuss their sense of disorientation. At home, Chris is informed of an invitation to a White House dinner party from her assistant, Sharon. Reagan excitedly shares her experience riding a gray horse borrowed from a man by the river. Reagan's mischief leads to a playful chase around the house with her mother. Elsewhere, Father Damien Karras is troubled by a beggar's request for alms on the subway. Despite his worries, he visits his ailing mother, who insists on staying in her apartment. After leaving money and a kiss for her, Damien departs. At the McNeil residence, Reagan presents Chris with a homemade chicken sculpture. They discover an Ouija board in the basement that Reagan claims she has used. As Chris reaches out to touch it, the planchette moves away. She suspects Reagan's involvement until she learns that Reagan has been conversing with an entity named Captain Howdy through the board. Reagan inquires if Captain Howdy finds Chris attractive, but there is no response. That night, Chris confiscates a tabloid featuring their picture from Reagan. Chris proposes a city tour in Washington for Reagan's upcoming birthday celebration. Reagan teases Chris about her relationship with Burke playfully, but Chris clarifies that they are merely friends. At a local bar, Damien shares a drink with Father Tom, the president of Georgetown University. Damien expresses his weariness with his current role and his desire to spend more time with his ailing mother, hoping for a reassignment. Despite his dual roles as a priest and psychiatrist, Damien is deemed the ideal candidate for his position, leaving Tom unable to accommodate his request. Damien's faith wavers as he questions his suitability for the job. On the day of Reagan's birthday, Chris is upset that her ex-husband is ignoring her calls to speak with their daughter. Reagan overhears Chris's heated conversation with the phone operator, feeling let down by how her special day has unfolded. Later that night, Chris receives a call to return to work. She discovers Reagan in bed, claiming that the bed is shaking and preventing her from sleeping. Chris exits the room and hears strange noises from the attic again. With the lights out, Chris uses a candlestick to navigate the darkness and investigate the source of the disturbance upstairs. She finds a mousetrap closed but empty and is startled when the candle flame suddenly flares up before extinguishing itself. Carl appears at the attic door, reassuring her that no rats are present. The following day, a priest arrives at the university church with flowers for the altar, only to find the statue of Mary defaced. On another occasion, Reagan undergoes various medical tests and begins to see a disturbing face in her mind. She becomes hostile towards the doctors and hums in a trance while waiting for results. The doctor diagnoses Reagan with a nerve disorder, which he considers typical for her age, attributing her behavior to depression over her estranged father. Chris is concerned when she learns that Reagan swore during her examination, a behavior she has never witnessed before. The doctor prescribes stimulants to help combat Reagan's depression. Meanwhile, Damien's mother is taken to a psychiatric facility by her brother. As they wait, his uncle remarks on how Damien could have been wealthy if he had chosen psychiatry over the priesthood. Patients at the facility cling to Damien upon seeing him as a priest. When he visits his mother, she becomes upset, believing he has forced her into the facility. Damien promises to take her home, but they lack the funds. Back at the McNeil residence, Chris hosts an elegant dinner party. During the event, she learns about Father Damien's role as a psychiatric counselor at the university from Father Joseph. A dispute erupts between Burke and Carl in the kitchen after Burke makes racially insensitive remarks. Chris escorts an inebriated Burke out of the house as the party continues. Regan joins the guests around the piano and makes an ominous prediction about one of them before urinating on the carpet. Chris intervenes and cleanses Regan before putting her to bed. Later that night, Chris hears Regan screaming from her bedroom and rushes to find her bed shaking uncontrollably. One evening, Joseph brings Damien alcohol and listens as he grapples with guilt over his mother's death. While asleep, Damien experiences visions of Merrin's harrowing experiences in Iraq and then hears his mother's voice calling out to him. A nightmare unfolds. Chris frantically chases her daughter, Regan, through the subway station. A demonic visage flashes before him, but Regan is already out of reach. Days turn into weeks as doctors struggle to diagnose Regan's erratic behavior, seizures, and disturbing personality shifts. Brain scans reveal nothing, leaving them baffled. The situation escalates when Regan becomes violently ill. Her eyes turn white, and a monstrous growl erupts from her throat. Overwhelmed, doctors subdue her with sedatives. Chris, distraught, witnesses her daughter's torment. Despite their best efforts, doctors can't find a physical cause. As a last resort, they suggest a psychiatrist. Back home, strange occurrences plague Chris. The lights flicker, a window is inexplicably open, and a demonic face appears for a fleeting moment. She finds Regan's room cold and covers her daughter before learning of Burke's accidental death. The news hits Chris hard. Moments later, she witnesses Regan, seemingly possessed, crawling down the stairs, blood dripping from her mouth. A descent into darkness. A psychiatrist attempts hypnosis, but the entity within Regan reveals itself through violent outbursts. Lieutenant Kinderman, investigating Burke's death, approaches Damien, suspecting foul play due to the unusual circumstances. Meanwhile, Regan is admitted to a psychiatric facility. Chris vehemently opposes the idea of an asylum, pushing for exorcism as a desperate last resort. Kinderman discovers a peculiar sculpture near the scene of Burke's fall. Back at the house, he notices Regan's clay creations eerily resembling the sculpture. Chris crumbles under the weight of suspicion, wondering if Regan is somehow involved in Burke's death. The entity inside Regan unleashes its fury, throwing objects and possessing Regan's body. Chris witnesses her daughter in a horrifying state, self-harming with a crucifix. Driven to desperation, Chris pleads with Damien to perform an exorcism. Initially reluctant, Damien is eventually convinced by the severity of Regan's condition, confrontation, and sacrifice. Inside Regan's room, Damien faces the demon. It reveals itself to be the devil, taunting him with his past. The battle escalates, culminating in Damien resorting to a desperate plea, offering himself in exchange for Regan's freedom. He tackles the demon, a struggle that ends with Damien falling from the window, mirroring Burke's demise. The demon, seemingly victorious, possesses Damien. Aftermath and uncertainties. Chris cradles a terrified but free Regan. Kinderman arrives to find the girl unharmed. Days later, the family prepares to leave the city. Joseph, Damien's colleague, delivers a touching eulogy. Regan, seemingly back to normal, feels a flicker of recognition upon seeing Joseph's clerical collar. The family departs, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and the haunting memory of their ordeal. As Chris hands Damien's medallion to Joseph, a sense of finality hangs in the air. The film ends with Joseph gazing at the steps where Damien fell, a silent testament to the priest's sacrifice. That's all for this look back at The Exorcist. If you enjoyed this spine-tingling recap, smash that like button and let me know your favorite moment from the film in the comments. And for more creepy content, don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps and horror explorations.